The Toby Gribben Show podcast.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the Toby Gribben Show podcast. Don't forget you can listen to the full show live at shoutradio.org.uk and all of the clips right here on the podcast. Anyway, enjoy the interview.
Acast recommends podcasts we love.
This is Stretch Marks, the brand new podcast with me, Caroline Foran.
And me, Sinead O'Moore, the podcast where we figure out the stretch of motherhood.
With your input, we want to find ourselves again and figure out the stretch with compassion and a healthy dose of honest humour.
Hit subscribe, get involved and follow us at Stretch Marks Podcast on Instagram. So we're doing this, yeah?
We are finally doing this. We are here, child-free. Let's get to it.
Acast is home to the world's best podcasts, including the Tommy, Hector and Larita podcast and the one you're listening to right now.
Dave Combs is a songwriter with 4 decades of experience writing over 120 songs and creating 14 albums of soothing and relaxing instrumental piano music. And he's here with us just now. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Toby.
Well, where did your love of piano playing and music come from in the first place, do you think?
Well, it came from probably my upbringing in the mountains of East Tennessee. You know, you're in Scotland, and my ancestors came from Scotland and Ireland and England, so I have a lot of your Scottish blood in me, and so, you know, the Scots love music, and so I do too. I grew up in a part of the country that loves music. My family, my mother and father both played the piano. My grandmother played an old instrument called an auto harp and an old pump organ, so I grew up around music all my life.
Yeah. And what made you decide to actually, I guess you can't pick up a piano, but want to do it?
Well, I guess hearing my father and mother play the piano when I was just a tiny little tot, you know, even too short to even reach the keys, my father would put me up on his lap and, you know, let me play along with some notes or whatever and teach me a few little ditties to play. And so it was in the house. The piano was in the house and the music was there all the time.
Yeah. Now, of course, one of your best-known compositions is Rachel's Song. How did that song actually come about?
Well, it came about in 1981. I was sitting at my piano, and as most musicians that kind of improvise or just doodle, I call it doodling on the piano or whatever, I sat down and I played this song. And it wasn't one that I sat down to write. It wasn't one that I had heard on the radio or anything. I just played this song. Now, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of creative people that songs just come to you. You know, you can't explain it. There's no really explanation except that I sat down and played this song, this tune. I played it from the chorus, the verse and the chorus a couple of times, and it never changed. And it wasn't until my wife came home from work a couple of days later and said she had had this song stuck in her head that she was humming all day long. And she told me that I played it all the time and wanted to know what the name of it was. And I told her it didn't have a name, and I just had made it up. And so she got all excited, and I ended up writing it down and putting it in the piano bench. And I'd play it for us and family. But that was just the beginning of the writing of that song. It didn't even have a name.
So when you played it the first time, did you record it somehow? Because imagine if you'd forgotten it after playing it that first time.
Well, as most songwriters will probably tell you, that when they come up with a song that really they like to play and whatever, it's burned into their brain. It's not something you're going to wake up to the next day and forget what that song was. You remember it. Now, true enough, when Linda said, have you written it down, I said no, and she said, well, you better write it down, because if something happened to you, then that song would be gone. She wouldn't be able to remember it and all that. So I did write it down just to make sure to satisfy her, and also to have it down on a piece of paper.
Yeah. So who is Rachel, by the way?
Well, it was a couple of years after I wrote the tune. Some good friends of ours had a little baby girl named Rachel. They asked me and Linda to be her godparents. And so at Rachel's christening service, Linda and I were sitting there with the family, and at the end of the formal part of the service, I punched Linda and I said, this song that we've been trying to think of a name for, it seems like now is a really good time to play it. So what do you think about me playing it? So I went up and asked the family if it'd be okay if I went up to the beautiful piano that was at the front of the church and play this tune. And they said yes, so everybody sat back down, and I went over to the piano and sat down and started playing. And I got about halfway through the song, Toby, and I kept hearing this sniffles in the crowd. The people were getting emotional from the music, and I noticed that even my eyes were leaking a little bit, had some tears. It was very emotionally packed.
Yeah.
And at the end of the song, when the last notes of the song were still dying away, I looked up and said, from now on, this song will be called Rachel's Song in her honor. And that the name was perfect, and it was just the perfect fit.
Yeah. And that being a couple of years after you came up with it, did it have a working title in the meantime, or you just never really got that far?
Never got that far. We'd sit down to try to come up with something, and no, it never did come up with anything that was even close to appropriate for the song.
And somebody actually recorded that song for you, because it's online, isn't it?
Yes. I was working for a company in the United States called Western Electric at the time, and that eventually became AT&T, which everybody knows about now as a telecommunications company. And I was traveling around the country. My background is in systems and computers. I was a computer programmer in technology. That was my career in the business world. And I was doing some basically what we would call internal consulting. I was helping our manufacturing plants implement new software to run their factories. It was a big job. It was a lot of work. And we had factories all over the country. And fortunately, Toby, one of those factories was in Nashville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Well, in as you know, Nashville, Tennessee is known as Music City, USA. Mm-hmm. A lot of recording studios are in Nashville. And so Linda, my wife, said, well, while you're in Nashville, why don't you get a demo recording made of Rachel's song? Up to that point, it had just been me playing it. Yeah. I thought, well, that's a great idea. So I spent some time running around Nashville one evening and looking for a studio, found one and got an interview. I got into the studio and got a tour of the place by an engineer by the name of George Clinton, who turns out to be a wonderful recording engineer in Nashville. And so he suggested a young man by the name of Gary Prim as a studio musician, piano player, keyboard player, to record Rachel's song for me, which I contacted Gary, and we did end up going to a little studio and getting a demo recording made of Rachel's song. So that's how it got recorded.
Why didn't you decide to just record it yourself?
Well, it's one of those things where, yes, I can play music and I can play things, and it sounds okay, but there is a whole, I call it a level of professionalism that my music might be here at this level, and then you raise it up a whole double level to what the professionals do with it. You can take a song, let's say you write a song, Toby, and you could probably play it on the guitar. I don't know whether you play an instrument or not, but you could play it. But if you hand that same melody and song over to a professional musician there in Scotland and say, okay, guys and gals, take my song and orchestrate it, arrange it, and perform it, and give me back a demo, you probably would be blown away with what you got back, because, you could play it, but boy, not like the professionals do in the studio. And so that's the reason. Yeah.
And of the other compositions you've done, do you have any particular favorites?
Well, I've written over 120. That's probably like asking you which one of your children are your favorites. But I do have, my second album. My first album has the first 7 songs I ever wrote, and I like all of those. And my second album of original music is called Beautiful Thoughts. And I find myself going back to that one a lot to play those songs that were on that second album. And I'm not sure exactly why, but those songs did turn out really, really well. And but I have 7 albums of original music. I've written over 120 songs. And then I have 4 albums of favorite hymns that Gary and I have recorded. And then I have a patriotic album and an album of familiar favorites like Moon River and Misty and More, all those old favorites. And I have a Christmas album as well. Ooh. So those are my 15 albums that I have.
Yeah. So how does that work then? I take it if Gary's playing the piano and you're sort of writing things, how does it work in terms of a familiar song that already exists? Do you sort of do the arrangement?
Yes. What I would, for example, the album that I'm talking about is called Familiar Favorites, appropriately enough. And so I picked out really my favorite songs of like Misty and More and Moon River. All those songs are on there. I would find this, I had the sheet music for those because I love to play those myself. So I sent those songs to Gary and said, okay, Gary, here's my 15 or 16 songs that we want to record on the album. And what I wanted him to do was to come up with his arrangement of that song. And so Gary has a very distinctive style. When you listen to him playing my music or even the familiar music, I have a lot of people that can instantly say, "Oh, that's Gary Prim," because he just has a style of playing that is recognizable. And so that was the way it worked. I always kept it real simple. I would send him just the concept or the song title, or in my case of my music, I would just send him the melody and the chords, basically of just a very simple, because you know what? When you're dealing with creative people like Gary Prim and other artists in the studio, the less direction you give them, the more freedom you are giving them to create out of their own style and so forth. So I've found the least amount of information.
Hey there, listener. Do you have something to say? Then you're already a podcaster. You just don't know it yet. Whether you love to shoot the breeze with friends, have an urge to share your passion with the world, or even want to grow your business, you've got something worth saying with a podcast. With Acast, it couldn't be easier to start your own show, launch, grow, and make money from your podcast across all listening platforms. If you have something to say, you're a podcaster. Head over to acast.com to get started for free.
Information that I gave direction to Gary, the better the product ended up with, because it was coming out of his creativity, and he and I just have a really symbiotic relationship anyway. We think alike, and I love his style. He likes my music, and so it always worked.
Yeah. So who are your influences in piano writing and playing? Do you have any contemporaries?
Well, I love all kinds of piano music. There's a Scotch-Irish, what is his name? Phil, what's Phil's last name? Anyway, there's a piano player in Scotland and Ireland that plays my style of music. He's about a contemporary of mine. I'm sorry I don't remember his last name at the moment. But, my influences were people like Roger Williams. I loved his piano playing. I love the music of Henry Mancini. And, I like country music. I love Floyd Kramer's piano music. And so I've been influenced, I guess, by a lot of really pretty instrumental music. And I like jazz. I like country. I like everything. But it's always coming back to a melodic, almost a lyrical kind of soothing, relaxing music.
Yeah, and the thing about piano music as well is that it can be any genre, because some people might just assume it's just relaxing, but it can be dance, it can be feel good, it can be anything.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Phil Coulter is the name. I think I was trying to remember. I don't know whether that name rings a bell with you or not, but I believe his name was Phil Coulter.
Yeah. So you've also written a book called Touched by the Music. What are you able to tell us about the book?
Well, the book was a culmination of tons of communications, letters and notes that I've gotten back from people over the years. I have heard, Toby, from over 50,000 people about my music. I mean, when you stack up the letters, my basement has probably about 25 big boxes of letters and notes. And I organized them by year, and I went back through and read a lot of those. And they're all so inspiring, because these were people that sat down and took the time to tell me their stories of how my music really touched them. It was some that were really tear-jerking, where they played my music at the death of a relative, or some of them were really sweet at the birth of their children. And those kind of sweet letters. And so with 50,000 of those over the years, plus the stories like we just talked about of getting my music recorded and deciding this and that about what to do with it. Yeah. That last year during the pandemic, like you and I, all of us were sitting at home going, okay, when are we going to get turned loose to where we can get out of here and go do things normally? So while we were home, Linda, my wife, said, well, why don't you write that book we've been talking about for years? Take some of these stories that you tell a lot, or put them down on paper, and then put some of the stories from these notes and letters, and that's what I did. I spent probably about 9 or 10 months writing, putting them down. I had to hire some editors and a lot of help to get the book together. But the book is full of those inspirational stories, and chapter 21 is a compilation of a large number of these really special notes and letters that I've gotten from people too. So it's a good read, I think. It's about 250 pages long, and it's also available on audiobook. If you want to hear my East Tennessee country accent for 8 hours, you buy the audiobook and I'll read it to you.
Most people, I'm guessing, would have chucked the letters out. So are you glad you kept them?
I absolutely am, because when I need a boost or a lift, all I have to do is go get one of my scrapbooks out and just start flipping through them and look at this and stop and read. And I remember a lot of these are so personal. You remember them once you start reading them, because they really had an impact on me when I first read them, because they were really so special. They're really inspirational.
Yeah. And you mentioned COVID just there. What have you been doing during COVID to keep yourself sane? And you've done a lot to help people as well, haven't you?
I tried to. Last year, when the COVID pandemic first started, I think it was, March, this time 2 years ago.
Yeah.
About this time. It's hard to believe it's been 2 years. But 2 years ago, you probably remember this too, when the news stories started coming out about everybody's lockdown, state of emergency has been called. You can't go out, and nursing homes and assisted living facilities, I'm sure where you are as well, locked down. Yeah, they had their residents that they said, well, you can't even go outside your room and visit with your neighbor across the hall. And they would bring their supper to them, put it under the door, and feed them in their room. They couldn't go out. It was almost as if they were in prison. Well, Toby, my mother, she passed away in 2017, about 5 years ago, and I remember going to her room at her assisted living facility she lived there about 2.5 years, and I know how much socialization and getting out of that room and going to hear a music program or any kind of special program, that was important to their mental health as well. Mm-hmm. And so I knew when this lockdown took place what a tremendous burden that was on these elderly folks in these homes. So what I did was I knew that my music was always really receptive to these people. They loved to listen to my piano music, and it was so soothing and calming and peaceful. Because I'd go out to the nursing home and I'd do a program. I'd sit and play the piano for these folks, and they just loved it. Yeah. And they always told me how much they enjoyed it. So I said, I've got to get some of my music to these people. And what I did was, I'm also a photographer. I love taking pretty pictures, and excuse me. And so I have a lot of really nice landscape pictures, pretty flower pictures, just pleasant pictures to look at. So what I did was I took my photography and I took my music and put the two together in created a music video with my song playing underneath, and then the slides of the beautiful photos would go by, and I created that with about 4 of my albums, and I put it on YouTube. And what I did, Toby, was to make it long enough to where they didn't have to jump up and down to replay, push start again on it. I looped it about 6 or 7 times, so that if you go to my YouTube channel, which is Combs Music, you'll find about 4 videos that will play between 6 and 7 hours. Wow. So basically the people the staff at the nursing homes could put my music up on a big screen someplace, push play on YouTube, it'd play all day long. They'd come back 6 hours later and it's still playing.
Yeah.
I got great feedback from that. The people really found it to be real relaxing and stress reducing, and so that was one of my ways of giving back.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you got anything coming up, maybe even more albums and things that you're working on?
Not at the moment. I'm basically with 15 albums and having recorded over 170 songs, I have plenty of catalog here to sell. Yeah. And what I'm really focusing now on, Toby, is to spread the word. You know, I have had my music played, yes, by thousands and thousands of people, and it's been downloaded and streamed millions of times. But there's still millions of people out there that never heard of my music. They never listened to Rachel's song. And so my mission is to spread the word to newer folks that have never heard it before. And so that's kind of my mission at the moment. Besides, you know, after you've created a certain number of songs, as we say, you become your own competition. Yeah. You know, when I only had one album, I could come out with another album, and my mailing list of, I don't know, let's say 10,000 people that had bought my first album, almost all of them would buy my second album. You know, they were hungry for another one. Well, I did that for every year for about, 10 or 12 years, and after a while, I guess you reach a point where people have got 12 albums, and I come out with a new one, and they say, well, I really don't need a 13th album from this comb. I don't even have time to listen to the 12. So, but anyway, so no, I have not written any. I certainly could, I think, and Gary Prim could certainly do a wonderful job recording it. But I'm focusing on spreading the what I already have out there to people that have never heard it before.
Yeah, definitely. Well, where can we keep up to date with you everywhere and find the book, Touched by the Music, if we're interested? Well,
now, you're in Scotland, and your listeners are probably all over the UK and maybe all over the world, but my website is Combs Music, COMBS music.com. And when you go to that home page, you'll see the picture of my book on the left. You'll see a picture of my CD of Rachel's song on the right. And in the middle, there's even a little link where you can click on that and play the entire Rachel song right on my home page and listen to it right from there. Wow. And when you, I suppose you all can order from Amazon. Yeah. And my books are on Amazon. And I understand that it's also Amazon.the.uk version as well. Yeah. But it's available at bookstores anywhere the book is. People can order it at any bookstore. In just about any country I've checked, it's available to be ordered. But go to my website, first of all, combsmusic.com, and there you can start exploring, and it'll lead you to different links, and that's the simplest thing to do.
Great. Well, many thanks for coming on the show today. It's been great having you on.
Well, Toby, it's been great to be your guest. It's been an honor, and I wish you the best, and thanks again for having me.
Hey there, listener. Do you have something to say? Then you're already a podcaster. You just don't know it yet. Whether you love to shoot the breeze with friends, have an urge to share your passion with the world, or even want to grow your business, you've got something worth saying with a podcast. With Acast, it couldn't be easier to start your own show, launch, grow, and make money from your podcast across all listening platforms. If you have something to say, you're a podcaster. Head over to acast.com to get started for free.
The throbbing pulse of sound, the Toby Gribbon Show.